Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Janish and I'm the Product Marketing Manager at AppViewX. To give you a little introduction about our company, AppViewX is revolutionizing the way NetOps and SecOps teams deliver services to enterprise IT. Our platform is a modular, low-code software application that enables the automation and orchestration of network infrastructure using an intuitive, context-aware visual workflow. Our topic for today is SSL TLS Certificate Management 103, Automate to Manage. And this topic will be presented by Murli, our Chief Solutions Officer. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in the Zoom control panel. I'll bring them up at the end of the presentation during our Q&A. Now, without further ado, I'll turn the mic over to Murli. Hello, Murli.
Thanks, Janish. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. So this is a three-part webinar. There's a third part. There's a final part of the three-part webinar. So we looked at the first part, which is what to manage, which is discovering, identifying where your digital assets are. The second one is how to manage. What are the basic premise of what needs to be managed and all that. And now we are focusing on automation to manage the certificates. So in this, I'm going to touch a little bit upon the problem. I guess everybody understands the problem. We did talk about it in the previous two webinars. If you haven't attended those, I'll give a brief about the problem and then the solution as to what we need to do, with or without AppViewX. How can we solve this problem with automation, right? And I will also touch upon how AppViewX is solving it from an automation perspective and so from a certificate management perspective. And also, I will show you a quick glimpse of what AppViewX can do for you. So that is the flow I'll take for today. And if you have any questions during the webinar, please use the chat window to share it. We will take it up at the end of the webinar just to keep the flow. Okay, so if you look at what is happening in the industry, right? There is a huge growth. There is a tremendous transformation, digital transformation, and there is a huge growth in security aspects and the encryption aspects of that. So if you look at the spending on the digital transformation, it's growing year on year. And if you look at enterprises, what they do, majority of them are looking to a more hybrid strategy with cloud coming in and all that. And that opens up a new perspective and a new challenge, throws out new challenges about encryption, securing the data, securing the data in the cloud, data at rest, data in transit in the cloud, right? And also securing from an attack perspective, from a volume of attack perspective as well. And then there is also the web pages. We get it from the browser trends that the number of HTTPS web pages, which is the secure web pages, is increasing. It's pretty close to 93%, which is like majority of the sites are now leveraging HTTPS, which means there are a lot more certificates out in the world. Right? And when you look at the use cases that are there, there is data in transit use case, which is like the TLS and HTTPS use cases, and there are identity use cases like user certificate and the S-MIME certificate and all that. And there is certificates used for code signing, right, and also encryption. And there are mobile and IoT also has quite a bit of use cases there. So there's each one of these areas are growing rapidly. Now, when you look at the certificate team or the PKI team or the encryption team today, right, they have a challenge. They need to be agile. There is, because of a lot of these changes, a lot of this, it's like a tsunami coming and hitting. because of the cloud coming in and encryption becoming the center focus. And also with, again, cloud and a lot of changes coming in, compliance is another major focus area. And then all this has to be done with optimizing the cost. So it's like it's a three-pronged problem there, and having a misconfiguration in any of these could have a huge repercussion and a huge price that they need to pay from a reputation perspective, data leakage perspective, compliance perspective, and all that, right? And if they are to do this with manual tasks, then it is more siloed, it is error prone, and it sort of, there is no central way of addressing the solution or scaling the solution. This is the state of where we are, or where our teams are. Majority of the enterprises are, and they are trying to move to a better model in a sense. So if you look at how they are today and how they are looking at tomorrow, there are some automation. There's islands of automation, in other words, which requires more of a developer skill set or an SME skill set in the area of encryption, in the area of PKI, for them to automate those tasks. It could be based on scripts or some CLI-based utilities and all that. They might be managing it using spreadsheet. And the policies are all defined across the board. There is a policy to not to use self-signed certificate. There is a policy to not use weak ciphers. So all these are there. From an enforcement perspective, it is more distributed. And there is, the security team has all these policies defined, but now if they want to go identify, or rather identify all the enterprise to see if everybody is following the policy of encryption, following the policy of the security from an encryption and certificate perspective, it's not that clear, right? And it's also difficult to monitor with all these distributed tool sets in a central way. So that is where now the industry is moving towards a more advanced automation and compliance tools, which is more simple, intuitive, but at the same time provides a central command and control and central visibility. And we see that happening quite a bit across multiple enterprises. Now, Gartner has been involved in all of this as well, so we work with Gartner quite a bit. And in there, they talk about in their reports about technology insights and all that, they talk about discovery, ownership, validation, lifecycle management, the DevOps integration, which is the whole new greenfield side of things, and auditing and reporting, and then the crypto agility. These are the main pillars, what they call in certificate management. And we discussed about, in the previous webinar, we discussed about discovery, ownership, validating, and all that. So here we look at more from an automation perspective, from a life cycle of the certificate, automation from perspective from a DevOps deployment perspective, and then how with that automation, how we can get that auditing and reporting, which will enable the crypto agility. And Gartner also has spoken on that the majority of the enterprises who use certificate management tools see a reduced number of certificate-related issues, outages, and misconfigurations, policy violations, and a whole bunch of stuff related to that. Now, looking at CERT loss, right now, we have clearly substantiated the problem, clearly understood how the industry is going and how the analyst in industry is identifying and then defining that. Now, we are aligning as a company to that trend as well. And in our certificate capability or AppViewX platform, we have a pretty robust discovery and visibility engine. There's something called a smart discovery, which you can tool in, configure it to do a whole bunch of things at specific timelines and off business hours, so that you have the capability to discover your whole farm in a pretty simple, intuitive way. And then once you discover those, you can define automated management or renewal piece of it, day 2 piece of it. Whether you use DevOps for managing as a CI/CD pipeline, or if it is a manual self-service process for appliances or third-party applications and all that. And if you're looking to automate that particular manual process with a human trigger, right, all that is available from a certificate lifecycle management perspective. And one of the key benefits is you get this holistic view where you see the CA, you see the device, and you see the certificate and its status, and all the actions that you want to do from one place. Sort of abstracts the complexity, abstracts the technology know-how that is needed from the end user who's consuming the service. So the policies are all predefined, prepackaged, or bolted in. So you pretty much get a driver's dashboard, not a mechanic's dashboard. So it's under the hood, there's a lot of other things happening, but then the mechanic defines the parameters. You just get a driver's dashboard with which you're able to seamlessly drive based on your intent that you want to implement. And with all these, you can define role-based access control for your team, for the driver's view. What all is needed from that perspective is defined, and it's all audited so that behind the scenes, the experts can look at those and track those to make sure that the policies are available and tweaked as and when needed. So it's a pretty simple approach that we have taken from a automation perspective, where the end user should not see the complexity. The principle that we have is if the end user has to, even if you add one additional step, then there is a potential for them to shortcut that step and move ahead, because it's so easy to create a self-signed certificate. I can do it on my laptop and deploy it. Why would I go through hassle of multi-step process if there is an easy way of doing it? That is what we are trying to simplify, so that security becomes easy and simple, not jumping through hoops and multiple steps. And the moment we do that, the adoption becomes very easy from an enterprise perspective. When people see that it is easier to do this, where I am able to do a more secure, standard policy compliant process versus a normal process takes maybe 2-3 steps. This is like a one-step process and it's easy. So then automatically people align to it, and then the policy and compliance is also achieved. So that's the mantra that we have taken, and it's been successful so far during our implementations. So let me jump on the demo. I'll quickly walk you through how and what we have done, and then we will spend some time on the questions after that. Let me jump to the log in to it, and I will quickly go into the automation piece of it. I'll focus on that area instead of all others. So we have something called the studio. In the studio, there is a report studio, rule studio, and workflow studio. Let's focus on workflow studio for now. So, for example, in a workflow studio, it is more like you can design your own workflows. It's more like a flow chart. So in this particular case, this is a certificate renewal flow. This is more like the mechanic's view of it. The mechanic is going to define this. I'll show you how an end user is going to consume it, the driver's dashboard. Right? So from a mechanics tools perspective, he has a whole bunch of tools that are available where he can basically use some of the UI tools where he wants to present to the driver, some of the dials available. He can pass a form or a report and all that. Also has change management integration, ServiceNow, Remedy, and all that. He has notifications, email notifications, and all those things. So all the integrations are available in here, and there is a store where you can go find additional integrations. So once you build this flow, there is also a nested out-of-the-box flow that we share on the store. So in the out-of-the-box store flow, you can just drag and drop and use the flow, which is actually a nested flow. So it's a flow in itself, which you can use. You can modify any of this. You can actually double click and then change some of these flows. These are all like Lego blocks. So we publish Lego blocks. We publish the flows, which are integrated Lego blocks for a specific purpose, and you can use them and repurpose them. So from a use case perspective, let's say I have a appliance which is literally a black box, and it is from a PKI perspective, I don't have much visibility into that black box, and that specific team is managing it. I can build this flow and just build one task, which is actually a plugin which talks to that particular device. And that device team manages that, but then everything else I can define from a mechanic perspective. So once I define this, right, let me just quickly show you a preview as to how the driver is going to see this, right? So once he tries this, rather, I'll just quickly go into the request piece of it. This is where you would see the actual driver's view. So I'm going to take some request which has already been completed. In the interest of time, I don't want to bore you with a whole bunch of stuff. So here we go. So this is a detailed form. Now, this particular form was passed in by a REST API. Now, if you look at the information that is needed, right, you can just get the common name alone. Let me just see if I have a. So this is a good example of a driver's dashboard. The driver only says, I need this domain, I need it on this device. That's all he says. Then this basically goes through a flow of, getting creating the key, creating the CSR, submitting it to the CA, getting the certificate and deploying it, pushing it to the device, and then setting up the work order status on ServiceNow and all that. Everything is done. So you can actually go, it's like a DVR. You can play, pause, review what happened at any given time in each of those steps, right? And you can send an email with you with all the details as to what happened in here. So this is a very simple driver's dashboard. Now the driver can come here and then fill the form, or he could be consuming this from a DevOps tool, from a Jenkins CI/CD pipeline, or he could be consuming it from some other or orchestration, larger orchestration platform as well. So this sort of makes the consumption of it. He doesn't have to know what encryption algorithm he has to use. He doesn't have to know whether the key length, key size, whether he doesn't have what locality he has to provide, whether it needs to be a SAN or not in that certificate. All that is absolved. He just says, this is my application. This is how I access my application. Just give it to me on this device. That's it. Right? The intent is captured and it's executed by the tool, the end-to-end live automation. And the technicalities in the mechanics dashboard, and I showed you the mechanics dashboard as well, which is also easy and intuitive. Same thing from a reporting perspective. You can actually create your own reports with a report studio, where you can say either you can go look at the store, where you can select some of the pre-canned report and samples and all that, or you can go create my own report, where you define the data source, you define the chart, and you define what is a drill down, what is the actions that you want to define in that. Similarly, you can do that for rules as well. So it sort of makes it intuitive, and each of the Lego blocks, the drag and drop Lego blocks that we have, is so it is published in a. We'll create a new flow just to show you. So it's sort of it's all published in a way that it makes it easy for you to consume. So let me go to an just open up do a pie chart, so that this has like a human interface task and an automation task, so that it sort of is clear for you. So this is like a store flow that we have published. So you can actually double click to see what it does and all that. So I've just placed it in to showcase. I just built a flow. The flow is ready to go. So I just click on preview. It'll run through, and it's going to show me the result of the device status that are there in the box. So I can take this flow, edit it, and then use it for other things as well. So it makes it even though it abstracts the complexity from the driver, it doesn't mean all the complexity is now on the mechanic. For the mechanic also, it makes it easier for him to rather configure this in an easy, intuitive way. Right? So in this right now, basically pulled up all the devices which are managed or in progress from a discovery perspective, or there is some problem with the device where he is not able to talk to the device. So it gives you a quick way of doing things like this. You can do a cost center based report or compliance based report. You can also define mitigation methods and all that. So it sort of gives a quick way of building it, and quick way of seeing value from the system. So I'll stop there. You can always sign up for a more detailed demo. We can walk you through and answer your questions in a more detailed step-by-step way. But this is just to give a quick introduction of how automation sort of helps. And what we have seen, this is a real data from our customers, where once they've implemented automation, there's a drastic reduction in the certificate issuance time. What used to take days or weeks is now within minutes. Right? A pretty huge reduction. And then also deployment time. Right? The certificate deployment, after getting the certificate from the CA, it's a manual process to deploy, and then there's change management involved and all that. And then once they deploy, whether the chain is valid, whether it is set up properly, and all that validation is like very quick. It's a huge reduction in the validation time as well, and how quickly you validate and compare with the compliance data. So it's sort of huge business value that you're able to see immediately after you implement the automation. Right, I think we are at the end of the webinar. I hope I didn't rush through. So there is a chat panel. You can log all your questions there, and you can go try AppViewX, go sign up there to try AppViewX, and you can also sign up for a free demo or free enterprise trial. And here we show some of the devices. It's a subset of devices that we support out of the box from a certificate perspective. We'll pause there and then check if there are any questions, and then we can go from there. So Janish, can you help me with checking if there are any questions on the chat panel?
Yes, Murli. There is one question. Do you require agents for pushing certificates onto devices?
All right, that's a good question. I think we hear about this a lot. I mean, there are two options. You can use agent or agentless. The reason we have two options is to securely manage end-to-end on specific devices. Using an agent makes it easier, but at the same time, agent might not be possible on all devices like appliances and all that. And some customers don't like agents on their endpoint, whether Windows or Linux. So we support both agent-based model and agentless model as well. And there is no functionality difference per se between agent and agentless. The only difference is if it is agentless, we will need some level of access to the device. If it is agent-based, then we talk to the agent and that agent runs with the level of access. So that's a difference per se. But other than that, I think everything that we do with an agent can be done without an agent as well. It is purely different, depends on the preference of our customers and how they want to deploy and architect it. All right, any other questions, Janish?
Yeah, Murli. So what kind of certificates do we support?
Yeah, we pretty much support all types of certificates and all types of keys, symmetric, asymmetric keys. And we are expanding that again. The whole automation platform, right? It is not bound to a certain type of certificate or certain type of keys. So it is extensible, and we have use cases across the board, across all the deployment models. It's pretty extensible.
And one more question, Murli. How do we ensure compliance while self-servicing?
So the mechanics dashboard, right? The mechanic can define, or the admin can define the compliance policy. And whenever we discover or provision or any of those tasks or even validate, we basically check for compliance, and we provide a pretty detailed report, compliance report. And that will tell you what are the parameters that we're checking and the parameters that they are compliant to or not compliant to, and also remediation plan if that is needed to be remediated. Pretty detailed steps there to do those. Okay, any more questions, Ganesh?
No, Murli, that's it.
Okay. Yeah. So regarding compliance, if you want further details, now we can talk on a demo or just schedule some time with us, and we can walk you through a little bit more in detail. We can look at how you're using it today, or what are the compliance policy that you have today, and how we can support that with our automation certificate platform. With that, thanks for your time. We will look forward to talking to you in future, and please reach out to us if you have any further questions offline. Thanks again for your time.